attend to the business of our county and our citizens. We just pray that your presence would be with us, that you'd give us wisdom in all of our discussions and our deliberations. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to?
Chairman, yes, if I could have the floor for a second. I would like to add an item to the agenda. We had a request come from the town of Anger for letters of support for some grant applications that they are pursuing. We've copied those for you. It's a simple motion to support that we would take. And so if you could add that as a new number 10 and then move the others down, that would be appreciated. They have a deadline of the 17th. So, and then we have to take the action today if we're going to take it.
Consent of the board to go ahead and add that item, new number 10. Commissioner McCoy? Good. We'll go ahead and add that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
What happened to the resolution about the DMV?
That is, huh? Yes, the letter to be signed. We have one additional that we'll pass around for you to support related to the DOT. That is not one that I thought needed a vote, given that it was your own decision as far as signing it. But we could also, what we had was there was an individual that's requested a letter of support from the board related to the locating of a DMV office in Lillington area. So if you want to add that and discuss that as well, you could.
Would you like to add that for discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to add the DOT DMV discussion as a item 11, and we'll push down the county manager's report.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will have a presentation by Mr. John Matthews. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, members of the board. Hope y'all doing well. Right, I have been promising y'all for a while I would come and give you a brief update on the Harnett Promise program that preceding board commissioners set up in effective fall 2019. And for those of you who are not educated on what this is, essentially, this is a tuition and fee subsidy for Harnett County High School graduates. It doesn't matter if they're graduates of a private high school, public high school, homeschool. As long as they graduated high school and they met the other criteria set forth, which included taking some dual enrollment courses, then they could qualify. And the idea being they get 2 years of tuition and fee assistance, and the county would be the last payer. So the student would be required to file for Pell Grants and scholarships. And so what I wanted to do today is give you a kind of a brief overview of where we are after having 4 fall cohorts. And so some summary data from the last 4 cohorts, we've had a total of 538 Harnett County High School graduates participate. 67%, 2/3 have persisted from year 1 to year 2 of the cohort, and that's actually trended upward over the last 4 years. And that's right on par with the highest persistence rate that the college has ever recorded. And but our persistence has actually been pretty good the last few years. We've worked very hard on getting students to continue from year 1 to year 2. Roughly 61% have participated in what we call career technical education pathways. So that's everything from trade skills to applied engineering to business and accounting, those kinds of things. And the complement of that, 39% have enrolled in university transfer pathways. That's associate in arts, associate in science, and associate in engineering, with an end goal of transferring to a senior institution and getting a baccalaureate degree. So those numbers are right about where I expected them to be, because students that participate in this program sometimes are trying to figure out what they want to do in life. And an associate degree that has a technical focus sometimes is the way they see is becoming financially independent sooner. Average GPA is 2.88, which is outstanding as a group. Average credit hours earned is just over 47 credit hours, and I'll remind you that the average associate's degree is about 64 hours or so. So that's pretty good overall. And then total credentials awarded at all levels, that includes the short-term certificates they can get in a year for technical programs, 410 roughly. Some of those are redundant. A student can get more than one certificate, so that's not necessarily 410 individual students. Those are 410 credentials earned at all levels. All right, so with that information, do need to level with the numbers that we had starting off on fall 2019 were frankly quite remarkable. We had 211 participants in year one, that first fall, and coincidentally, our college had its highest ever recorded enrollment in fall 2019. In the state of North Carolina, most colleges set enrollment records in fall 2019. Then in spring 2020, the pandemic onset and enrollment plummeted at colleges and universities nationwide. And of course, the employment crisis started about that same time too. So if you were to track our enrollment just in Promise over the last 4 years, it's actually trended downward. But here's what's remarkable about that. In providing data to the county manager, I took a look at how many local high school graduates came to the college at all. Doesn't matter if they applied to Promise or not, how many high school graduates. And what we've seen that it trended that we started with 321 in fall 2019. 210 of those were Promise participants. And then it trended downward about 100 in fall 2020 when the pandemic was onset. And then we started to recover in fall 2021, went up to 260. And now we're back up to almost where we were in fall 2019 as a this past fall 2022. Now, again, I'll reiterate what I just said. That's irrespective of whether or not they're using the subsidies through the Promise program. Those are high school graduates from the spring of 2022 that matriculated to our college for post-secondary study in fall 2022. Here's why I mentioned that. One of the goals of the Board of Commissioners back when we discussed this program before it was approved was how important it would be for our communities and for economic development to increase post-secondary participation. They finish high school, they immediately start studying something that leads to either going on to university, something that leads to a skill set that allows them to get a job. If you take a look at the Promise data itself, the people you're subsidizing is actually decreasing over time, but the overall post-secondary participation has gone up to where it was in fall 2019. I think by that metric alone, you can say you've accomplished the mission you set forth back in 2019. And that's pretty remarkable. I was telling Christian about that too. I said, that's a great story to tell industries, is that even without subsidizing post-secondary participation, we've been able to set the culture whereby people are participating. So who have we been serving the last 5 years? 30% of our cohorts are first-generation college students. About half are Pell recipients. They receive Pell Grants, either partial Pell Grants or full Pell Grants. 63% are female, 37% are male. That's slightly disproportionate, but that's not actually unusual for colleges and universities. Higher education has for years been slightly disproportionately female versus male, given the total population. 61% are white, 20% are Hispanic, 11% black, and 8% multiracial. And one of the things that we have tried to work on the last couple of years, what we're continuing to work on with Harnett County Schools, is to increase participation at the college level from students of color and from males, because they are underrepresented from where they are. But that is not unique to our college, not even unique to North Carolina. That's a nationwide trend. Most popular program pathways. This shouldn't surprise any of you. Pre-health sciences is a term used to describe a student taking classes in a program that will lead to admission to a college health sciences program like nursing or dental hygiene or medical sonography. So 19% of the students enrolled in Harnett Promise are actually taking the courses that lead to a potential admission to those programs. So they're doing anatomy and physiology, general psychology, they're doing microbiology. Those are the kinds of courses they're taking leading to that. Associate in Arts at 19%, Associate Science at 18%. So those are the two major transfer pathways for folks that want to go to university. And then Health Sciences, meaning that they're straight into a Health Sciences program, usually by the time their first year ended, 6%. And then Business Administration, 5%. You can add another couple of percentage points for accounting. Industrial Systems, Welding and Machining, approximately 5%, and Criminal Justice, 4%. So that gives you a little bit of a picture of your cohorts and what they're actually majoring in. All right, so the program was originally funded to take the group that just started this fall and fund them all the way through their second year. But as of June of 2023, we're going to have another graduating high school class. And so what I'm presenting you today would be something that I would use to suggest how we continue this for another 4 cohorts. And again, we're funding the fall 2022 group for 2 full years. But according to the original agreement, we're not funding a new fall group unless you decide to renew this agreement. So I've got a few things on here we've worked on over time that based on lessons we've learned to amend. And a lot of this is just verbiage. It's just cleaning up some of the language. It really goes back to your favorite English teacher in high school and how he or she might have wanted to make sure we write these agreements. The start date and the years we would cover in the new agreement, we would actually include cohorts 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026. Student would have to be a resident, Harnett County 4, and again, it's just a wording change, minimum of 12 continuous months prior to the beginning of the fall semester. Be a high school graduate from public, private, or charter school. We didn't have charter school in the original agreement that we signed several years ago. We wanted to make sure that was included in here in writing. And the student will attend the college as a degree-seeking or credential-seeking student. And you'll notice a strike-through for full-time, and that can explain why. If you analyze any college student population for the last several years, what you'll see is they go back and forth from being part-time and full-time in the same year. With our students at the community college, that actually means something, and it doesn't mean they're failing classes, and it doesn't mean they're doing the wrong thing. Sometimes they've taken so many credit hours as dual enrolled high school students that they outpace the program that they matriculate into when they go to the college. So they end up with a semester where they've already taken the required courses for maybe half of a spring semester. So they end up with about 6 or 8 or 9 credit hours. Then they may be back in 15 or 16 credit hours the next fall in their second year. So what this does is it cleans up that part of the language so that we understand that what you were potentially funding is a student who occasionally take a part-time semester while they're on their way to finishing the credential. There's nothing nefarious about that. That's just the way college students take courses now. And when they do a lot of dual enrollment, they get so far ahead, sometimes they run out of those options before they reach their capstone. That makes sense? Okay. Moving on, Part 1A. Successfully completed 4 dual enrollment courses or 12 dual enrollment credit hours. We have maintained this requirement, and based on dual enrollment course taking during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, I think this is one of the reasons that less students have taken advantage of the Promise program. We've just had a slight dip in the number of students taking dual enrollment courses with us, and that might render them ineligible. Because remember, that's part of the ante. They have to show that they're ready for college level work in order for the county to subsidize that. We took out the reduction. It was a waiver we put in where we reduced the requirement based upon the difficulty in certain students taking courses. Some students had internet access issues at home, and they took as many courses as they could while they were at their native high school. They would sit in a lab and they would do their courses that way. So you, the Board of Commissioners, made a waiver, and there's no reason for that waiver anymore, so that's stripped out. Part 4, just using better English, have completed the FAFSA and submitted all required verification documents. And by the way, that is something that we have to bird dog constantly, the students finishing the FAFSA. Our partners at Harnett County Schools have been great partners in helping us encourage students and their parents to complete that in a timely way. Finally, in Part 1B, Subpart 1, funding from federal and state grants, scholarships, and outside funding must be exhausted before the program begins paying, eliminating, or striking through a student's tuition and required fees, because by default, we've already said that's what the county's paying for. There's no reason to repeat it. Second part of that, the 2 years of eligibility begins in the fall semester after high school graduation and ends the spring semester of the second year. Again, no reason to repeat the phrase after high school graduation. We are including a couple of things here in bold that I want you to pay attention to. And one, Attorney Appel and I had some discussion about, County Manager Trout and I had discussion about students who receive an out-of-state designation from the Residency Determination Service will be required to pay the difference in the tuition rate. So your staff attorney asked, well, wait a minute, if they're eligible as residents, then why would they have been determined ineligible? So I had to explain. RDS is something that was put upon us by statute. Both the community colleges and the state universities are required to have all incoming students show proof of residency through this third-party residency determination service. It's rare. It is rare. But I have seen at least one case where a student comes in, they look, they smell, everything like a resident. But for some reason, with the documents they submit to RDS, they come back being labeled a non-resident. So it's been this board's decision that what they're funding is a student who's resident. Usually that issue can be ironed out somewhere down the line. Usually they've submitted something incorrectly, but we have to bill them. From that moment, they show up based upon how RDS rates them. They either rate them as a resident or non-resident. That's why it's in there. If y'all have heartburn about that or you want to discuss that further, I'm open to that. I feel like we need to hold the taxpayer dollars, we need to hold them harmless for a situation like that, where a student has presented themselves as a resident, but RDS has determined them to be a non-resident. There is quite a difference in tuition and fees between the two. We also added the summer term between year 1 and year 2 would be included. We did not include that last time. Probably should have, and here's why. There are lots of technical programs that include a summer semester. It's built in. The laser and photonics program requires its students to do a physics course during the summer because there's really not enough time to shoehorn it in the fall and spring. Students will often take a gen ed course and that physics course during the summer term. That's part of their progress. There's no reason not to fund that. It is part of their program of study, and it is expected for them to do in order to graduate. Now, the costs are simply updating the fiscal years. Example, right now, looking ahead at the next cohort, starting in the fall, they would be part of fiscal year 2024. So when you think, and actually that's what it should say fiscal year 2024, not 2020. That's my error from the original presentation. So it would be fiscal year 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, and a final amount to finish the last cohort for 2028. The amounts that I've included here have actually modified from what they were the first time that we started this program for one reason. When I looked at how much the county has actually been billed, we've not gone much over $200,000 a single year. So with that in mind, even if we grow program participation a little bit, there's enough wiggle room in there to allocate up to $250,000 for those fiscal years and still be in line. So obviously this is a reduction from what we had from the first agreement. Moving ahead, Part 2, Part B, Subpart 1. The college will include on the invoice the number of students enrolled in the program and the number of credit hours each student is taking. So that's just a way to audit essentially what we're billing the county. Finally, the college will college will assign appropriate staff to market the program to eligible high school graduates, collect paperwork, ensure eligibility, make awards, monitor progress, verify that students are registered. There's a reason we changed that from the action verb, register a student, to verify that students are registered. In 2023, it's rare that you go to a college or university and someone puts you in a chair and they do the keystroking for you. Students are essentially in a mode of self-service. They actually have been for years. And so at this point, we're simply recognizing that students are allowed to register and that we verify that they are registered. So our role is to be essentially the internal auditor, make sure they're registered for classes. And that last part down there at the bottom, you can barely see. We're actually I've got that listed in a separate section, and Attorney Appel and I will it's basically just saying the termination clause for the contract. We're not changing that at all. In fact, I don't even think we need to change the location. All right, so I've given you kind of a quick and dirty update on the cohorts and what they look like. And I've given you kind of an update of what this would look like if we continued it for another 4 years. Again, we've had great success. I think we can have more, but that is going to involve using our K-12 partners to help us recruit the kind of students that we know can benefit from the program. And so we're both parties are committed to that. So I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Very much, Mr. Matthews. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I have because I was very instrumental with the previous commissioner in getting this program off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there should be some discussion on making sure that the students that qualify for this program are residents of this county. Because what we're doing is using our taxpayers' money to pay for this program. And I want to say this. I think it's a very important program because I work hard to educate the public that this program existed. Another question I have for you is what provision do you all provide for the students that are in our current schools, high schools, that are getting ready to graduate, and giving them a timely manner in which they will have knowledge of this program to be able to enter into. I mean, this is a lot of money, but I think it's money that is well worth spent, especially since we are trying to increase economic development growth in this county. And we're going to need this.
Yeah. So in regard to your question about what we do to encourage students to think about this early on while they're in high school, because again, you're reflecting on the fact that there's an ante involved.
Right.
They have to take dual enrollment classes and earn those credit hours to be eligible. And you also heard me say there's some evidence to indicate that that's one of the reasons that program, even though they're coming to us after high school, the applications for Harnett Promise have gone down over time. We have an embedded college employee at each of the public high schools. And one of those employees also serves the Harnett County Early College, and we also have an employee in that same group that works with Cape Fear Christian Academy and with homeschool students. So we are talking to them at the public high schools from the moment they arrive as 8th graders. In fact, I think most 8th graders in the last few weeks have visited the high schools that they're going to go to, that they're assigned to. This is the time that my 8th grader just did that at Western. They're being told about Harnett Promise at that moment. And then our embedded advisor, our career coach, is working with them through the guidance team from the moment they show up as freshmen. So there is an awareness of it. I think where we're not getting purchase and not getting traction is with students that might not have a strong college-going culture at home. And honestly, looking at the data, that's what I'm seeing. So if you look down and you look at the students who might be challenged financially, I'm not sure we're reaching enough of them. We can do so much, and then we need some help from the larger community to encourage that kind of thinking, because we're here, we're available, and I think what's happening is some of them are showing up on our doorstep early August, waiting to enroll for classes to start August 15th, and they've realized, okay, I need to do something now. And we need to encourage these high school students to get involved sooner. And to be blatantly honest with you, I do know there are some cultures within high schools where students are encouraged to take AP courses in lieu of taking dual enroll college courses. And depending on the student, that might be exactly the right thing to do. But the thing to remember about AP, as great as it is, if the student does not take that exam and make a minimum score on the exam, there's no college credit. If you take one of our courses and you make a C or better, there's college credit, period. There's no debate about that. So, Commissioner McCoy, I think you're right. We need to encourage more students who would benefit from it to take advantage of it. I mean, I'm looking at this data, and I'm seeing that we had 312 high school graduates from June come to the college. And 98 of those did the Promise program. And that's a third. That's less than a third. Whereas going back to fall 2019, about 2/3, roughly, over 2/3 of our high school students, remember that was record enrollment in 2019, over 2/3 took advantage of the Promise program. So it's there, but we just don't see as many students taking advantage of that opportunity. But they've got to do all of those eligibility steps. And our people are there. If anybody ever wonders, if you want to know who's in the high school, the public high school, or you want to know who to connect someone at Cape Fear, you guys just need to call me. I will connect you with that person. They will gladly help that student enroll in a dual enroll course. But, and I don't know if I answered all your questions, Commissioner
You
McCoy.
answered my question there, and it's very important to me, simply because when we implemented this program, I hit the street and went out into the communities to make sure. I even had a family in my church that had two graduating the same year. Didn't know anything about the program at all. And I explained it to them. I took flyers to many other churches in the community to let them know that this program was aware. It's important to me simply because if we don't educate our kids and give them an opportunity, for those that can't afford it, we're the one losing out. It's not so much, because there's some talented kids, and you don't know their talent until you tap into it. So I appreciate you answering that question. But I do, well, let me say, I do wish that there were other ways for us to make this more public to the average citizens, because there are a lot of citizens that can't afford the kids to go to college. And that 2 years at community college can make a huge difference in their lives. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your presentation, because I would hate to know that I voted and the other commissioners voted for a program that's not, moving in the right way to be very effective for our county. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we've built a culture in this county where post-secondary participation is important. People know that high school graduates need to do something, either go in the military, go to work, and apprentice, or they need to go to school. The answer is not sitting at home and incubating at home. They need to go do something. And so the data shows they're coming to us. But I would agree. I see in the demographic data alone opportunity for increased participation. Pretty obvious to me. And remember, Pell Grants, once awarded, and you maintain your eligibility, are good for up to 12 semesters. So a student could, if they make good grades, go all the way through a baccalaureate degree if they are Pell eligible. And so Pell obviously is a much greater traction point for a potential student than even the Promise program is. But if the Promise program is what gets them to apply, if that's the fulcrum point that tips them toward applying for a Pell Grant, then I think we've done our job. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
Chairman, we would like to have this item placed as a separate item if you're ready to consider it, because we have not worked out the final language in the MOU. So there may be language that's different in the MOU when it's presented to you for approval than is currently there. It's better to be able to show you if there are any changes.
Is it the pleasure of the board to add this as a line item next week for discussion? We can discuss this MOU in further detail. We'll go ahead and add that as a separate line.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 4, presentation on the status of the wastewater treatment plant and septic and porta-john disposal. Mr. Steve Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good morning. I'm here to update you on what's been going on at our wastewater treatment plant here in Lillington, the North Plant. And so just wanted to give you a current status update. On Friday, about 3.5 weeks ago, February 17th, we suspended septic and porta-john receiving at the plant due to the condition of our sludge stabilization and storage lagoon. The lagoon is vital to not only to septic and porta-john settling necessary for treatment, but also for all wastewater influent tributary to the plant. So everything eventually goes to the lagoon that comes into the plant, whether that's regular sewer, whether that's septic we take, or porta-john waste that we take from haulers. So that's a vital part of the whole treatment process. Just to update you, we've been receiving records amounts of septic and porta-john waste in the last 2 years. To give you an example, in 2020, the plant averaged about 285,000 gallons per month. 2 years later, we averaged 450,000 gallons a month. That is an increase of 57% in just 2 years. So that gives you an example of what we're looking at there. The plant received the most septic porta-john waste ever this past January. So just a couple months ago, we received almost 700,000 gallons. So haulers have been busy. HRW's consulting engineer prepared a detailed memo explaining the issues we're experiencing at the plant as a result of the amounts of waste, septic and porta-john waste we're receiving. You were provided a copy of that memo, which got into a lot of technical detail about what's happening there. To briefly summarize that memo, the plant doesn't have the assimilative capacity to handle these large volumes of septic porta-john waste. So that's a fancy term, assimilative capacity, but what that really means is the plant doesn't have enough flow. It's not like a plant that's getting 20 million gallons a day of flow. There's a plant that size receiving that amount of flow. It's a lot easier to dilute that amount of septic and porta-john waste that's coming in, and the chemicals that are involved in that, and the way that can negatively affect treatment in the plant. There's a saying in our business, dilution is the solution. The more flow you have, again, the easier it is to dilute that, to dilute those constituents. The memo also delineates that porta-john waste is the main stream causing the issues with the lagoon. So just to go into that a little deeper, wastewater treatment plants rely on microbial organisms to break down solids. The chemicals present in porta-john waste inhibit this process, and the solids do not break down and settle out as sludge. So it's vital in our lagoon that happens. That's what the lagoon is for. It's there for that waste, for the solids to fall to the bottom and the clear water to come to the top. That's the issue. The chemicals, again, in the porta-john waste, most people have used a portable toilet at some time or another. You can see it's got like a gel, a blue chemical in it that keeps that separation from occurring. Regular septic received from septic tanks do not cause these issues. So there's no issue with a tank being pumped out from somebody's yard due to too much rain or a failed drain line system or something like that. That happens. The folks over in environmental health and most septic tank haulers will tell you, once every 5 at a maximum and a minimum every 10 years, you need your tank pumped out. I'll give you an example. I'm on a septic tank at my house, like a lot of neighborhoods, and I've lived in my house for 20 years. My tank's been pumped twice. So that's an example of, now I haven't had any issues with my drain lines or anything like that, but occasionally when you're putting phosphates from washing machines and that kind of stuff in there, it inhibits that the same type of treatment happens naturally in a septic tank that happens at a sewer plant. But if that's inhibited by bleach or maybe something else that you put in there, some kind of detergent, that can negatively affect that. And sometimes people have to have them pumped a little bit more, but that's just a standard benchmark, if you will. The following slide shows a before and after picture of the lagoon. So this is the lagoon basically 6 months ago, October 2022. That's a drone picture of the plant. So look how green and organic the lagoon looks. Looks like there could be lots of life and microbial digestion happen there, correct? That lagoon has settled out, the solids have gone to the bottom, and the top is clear water. And I don't want to get into this too deeply, but what happens is those tanks off to the top of the lagoon there to the left, what happens is we dredge the sludge off the bottom of that lagoon. It goes into those tanks where we have think of it like a washing machine. You know how a washing machine spins real fast and gets the water out of the clothes and then it's dried? The same process happens there, and we produce pellets with what's dried that are hauled off to a composting facility. But when that lagoon does a mix, the water from those tanks, after we produce the pellets, goes back. The water that's after it's rinsed out or spun real fast and rinsed out, goes back into that lagoon. Then that lagoon has to be decanted. That's from that little machine you see close, those little floating things close to the very bottom of the picture there in the lagoon. That's the decanter. So it'll pull water off the top and take that back through the plant for regular digestion and regular treatment. But what we're facing right now is that's not happening because this is what the lagoon looks like. See how it's black and looks dead? Well, those chemicals have prohibited that separation. So that sludge is at the top of the water of the lagoon, not at the bottom. It's not been allowed to separate. So that decanter, when we pull that water off, we're just pulling that sludge right back into the plant again. And so with all the phosphorus and ammonia and all the things that upset the treatment in that plant, so we can't meet our nutrient limits. So again, those before and after pictures are pretty dramatic. So it's pretty easy to tell from these before and after photos how the porta-john chemicals have kept the solids from separating and leaving clear water at the top. We discussed that. Last week on Wednesday, to give you an update, we resumed receiving septic waste only at the plant, as the 2.5-week rest actually helped the lagoon. In probably the 10 days or so since that picture was taken, the last one, the lagoon does look a little better. Just letting it rest naturally and not introducing those porta-john chemicals actually made the separation happen. So the lagoon looks a little better. We also started a pilot process And this was detailed in the memo you got a little bit about to see if we can mix the porta-john waste with sludge from the water treatment plant. It doesn't go into the lagoon. That waste, that sludge is pumped directly from the water treatment plant and goes to those tanks that I showed you. So it's not introduced into the lagoon. So this was a way to keep the porta-john waste and the septic waste from going into the lagoon at all. And we wanted to see how that would work. The early results from this pilot have not been promising, as the water we return to the lagoon from the sludge removal process is still colored blue, like the chemicals found in the porta-john waste stream. But I mean, we're going to continue and keep trying to find a solution. If the results from the pilot study do not improve, our plan is to limit and regulate the receiving of porta-john waste by issuing haulers of such waste an industrial user permit. And that's a pretty common process. For example, I'll use something that, like Christian would be familiar with. If a plant wants to come in and they want to start a manufacturing process, a lot of times the waste stream that as a result of that manufacturing process, it's not biological. It may have metals in it. It may have stuff that would upset that biologic process of treatment at a wastewater treatment plant. So they usually do an analysis and determine what the constituents are in that waste stream. And we issue them an industrial user permit where we say, this is what we'll take of that amount of waste stream that you have. And here's how much you can send us. Pretty common. It's called pre-treatment also, like the Saab Barracuda plant here in Lillington. That would be somebody we would issue an industrial user permit to, because they do chaff over there. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's like a metal that's ejected from the back of an airplane to confuse radar. When somebody shoots a missile at a plane, that chaff blows out and confuses the radar signal, so the missile goes to the chaff rather than to the fuselage of the plane. So you can see, though, that whole waste stream with that metal is something that's not biologic. That's not like flushing something down the toilet. So we would issue them an industrial user permit and, again, closely regulate and continue to sample what they're bringing us. So that's an idea where we could go forward if the pilot doesn't work out and follow that same process to continue to take some porta-john waste. HRW's obligation, finally, is to serve all the sewer customers, both residential and commercial, that this plant serves. Now, I want everybody to think about that. That includes basically every town in the county goes to this plant except for Dunn. Anger, Coates, Irwin, Lillington, Campbell University, Bowie's Creek, and even partially the town of Fuquay, Varina, and Wake County. They all use, Fuquay does have another plant, but about half of their waste stream comes to us. We serve all the commercial businesses and all the residents in those towns, and even in areas outside of town. There's not a lot. Most of them are in municipalities. But some of that's changing as we provide more and more sewer out in the county, this growth north of the river. So everybody is dependent on that plant being able to meet its treatment obligations going forward. So, septic tank waste, again, we don't see that as a big problem. We understand that haulers have to have a place to take their waste to. We're not trying to be non-customer friendly here, non-business friendly. Again, we've got a lot of businesses that depend on the plant. So we're trying to make a compromise here. We will continue to take the septic tank waste immediately, and we're continuing to study how we can take porta-john waste in the future and what's the best way to do that without upsetting the treatment process at the plant. I know that's a lot to go over in a short amount of time, but I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Comments? I have a question. Is a lot of this porta-john waste, you said it's haulers that are bringing it in, like is it strictly Harnett County or is this waste coming from other counties?
Oh, it's coming from all over.
All over.
It's coming all over. It's coming from the Virginia line, some of it.
The porta-john waste?
Absolutely. It's coming from the whole region. And the majority of haulers don't haul septic tank waste. So I think we issue permits different than industrial user permit, but we issue septic permits to different haulers to allow them to bring septic and porta-john waste to the plants. There are very few of these haulers, and I think it's under 15, Glenn, or something like that. It's between 10 and 15 haulers who haul to us. There are very few of them bring any porta-john waste. But, I mean, there's some that have a lot of high volume, and that's what's really caused the issue here. But it's coming from all over, Chairman, to answer your question. It's coming from Raleigh, it's coming from Durham, it's coming from construction sites where portable toilets are all over the place.
Do you see a possible way in order to remediate that? I mean, do you need a separate facility for this or different equipment or?
Well, let me say this. The plant's going to go through an expansion here. And so we're actually going to get rid of part of that lagoon and transfer some of that settling process out to where we do some initial treatment right now in those oxidation ditches, which are big concrete troughs, if you will, that sit right in the middle of that plant. So it's hard to determine how that will affect what chemical portable toilet waste we can take, or porta-john waste. So we'll have to look at that at that time because there'll have to be a whole nother analysis done. Again, when flows get up, even though we're going to build a larger plant, those flows won't come up immediately. It'll take a little time for that plant to get up above 10 million gallons per day. Like I said, it's sitting there now about 4.5 MGD a day. It's going to take a little while for those flows to get up to be able to dilute that product. So it's just going to be a continual process where you have to look, Matt, and see what the best way is to treat it going forward.
The dissolution is the solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good deal. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
I want to give a shout out to CCCC too. I had 2 sons. One went through the transfer program. That saved me 2 years of tuition and room and board in Boone and Appalachian State. And the other one did the 12-year 12-hour dual enrollment. And that saved me a semester at NC State. So tuition and fees and room and board. So I want to give a shout out to CCCC. I think they do a great job.
Yes, sir.
My final comment on this is, this isn't the end of the story here. We know that there's an issue here. Staff is going to continue to work to find. Both Steve and Glenn have been working hard to try and find a solution to this. They're keeping in mind the full responsibility they have to the overall system, but also trying to make sure that we're providing the service that we need as far as being able to take septic waste and also potentially porta-john waste. So I appreciate their efforts. They're doing a hard work of trying to find solutions to this as soon as we can.
And I think the problem is only going to increase as we get more subdivisions and developments coming into the county because those builders, they've got to have porta-johns. And with all the building or all the lots that are in various stages of permitting, that's a lot of porta-johns. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize, it's not just builders. They're building 540. You go look, you see porta-johns all over the place up there. They're getting ready to start building the Andrew bypass. There's going to be porta-johns every so often.
Yes.
DOT improvements, and the building, it's going to increase.
Yeah, let me comment on that. Most plants won't take porta-john waste, period. They don't want it. It's messy, it's nasty, you don't know what you're getting. If you've been in a chemical portable toilet, you've seen things that aren't human waste in there. And so, so most plants, I'm telling you, they won't touch it. So their options are limited when it comes to getting rid of that waste stream. Usually bigger plants, like I said, Raleigh, other places, City of Durham, other places with larger plants are the only ones around who want to deal with porta-john waste. I talked about Wake County. A lot of those portable toilets coming down here from Wake County, Fuquay won't take it. Holly Springs won't take it. There's just lots of plants that won't even deal with it. And that's just to name a few. Hardly any of them around here will take it. I think Smithfield may take it, and Sanford might to a limited degree. So it's not something that most plants want to deal with because of the very issues that we're facing right now. So again, like Britt reiterated, we're trying to come to an amicable solution. This plant won't be able to take those volumes that we've been taking. For example, that month that I said where it was over 600,000 that we got in, we estimate about 450,000 of that was porta-john waste. Just to give you an example, the septic tank volumes are nothing compared to the porta-john waste. So that's what's really hurting that lagoon in our treatment system. So, and then some haulers mix that porta-john waste with septic tank waste, and that just makes it worse. You can't even separate it that way. So the chemicals are still in there. So.
One more quick.
Out of the 10 to 15 haulers, how many of them are resident or located in Harnett County, and how many of them come from other counties?
I think most of them are pretty local, Commissioner Weatherspoon. I mean, there may be some right outside of Angier that live in Johnston County, for example, but I think most of them are pretty local, right around here or, within 20 miles, something like that. But most of these haulers, have another list of plants too that they're allowed to dump at. So when we shut down, it might create some, they may have to drive a little further in some instances. And this is not the only time. Sometimes we shut down because the septic receiving station gets broken, like an auger breaks or a screen breaks. And, we have to shut down for a week until we can get it repaired. And we try to be sensitive to we know they like to come here if it's closer. And quite frankly, some of them like to come here because they're not nearly as regulated as they may be at other plants. Because we don't have any regulation on them. They can bring whatever and dump. We're not, a lot of plants may limit waste to county inside their own county. For example, like if you dump at Sanford's plant, I'm not 100% certain on this, but I think it has to be from Lee County. So, it's tough to take porta-john waste, period. Plus, when you're a regional ground where everybody's bringing, or regional system where everybody's trying to bring porta-john waste from all over to kind of get out from underneath that regulation, then it's really tough to handle those amount of volumes. So.
Fuquay just brought the Terrible Creek plant online, I believe. Are they still not accepting?
I don't think so, Commissioner Weatherspoon. I haven't called Fuquay, and I don't know for certain. But I don't understand that they don't take any. I know Holly Springs. I'm pretty certain they don't take any either.
Yeah.
So those are the two southern Wake County plants that would maybe take some of that flow.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I got one quick thing. It seems like this is an across-the-board issue. I mean, if it's the porta-john waste and the chemicals, like in that's the problem. And everyone's having that issue. I guess the blue water, maybe it's above my pay grade, above your pay grade, and probably our profession, but don't you think somebody should come up with like a green way or a green chemical in order to break this down? I mean, first person to come up with that's going to make a lot of money, I'm sure. So,
I mean, I agree, you know, and treatment plants aren't the only solution. You know, haulers can get their own land application permits, or they can have pre-treatment at their sites where they remove some of those chemicals themselves before they take them to plants, or they can spread them on fields themselves. You know, if they're taking just septic, that is a nitrogen-rich product. You know, they can take that septic and spread it on a farmer's field and get a land application permit in the state of North Carolina. So that happens some with really big haulers, but most haulers don't want that. They want to let us worry about the end product. They just want to be able to run out and, you know, take care of their business and bring it here and then let us worry about the after effects of the treatment.
But
So,
we are looking, talking to the haulers. We want to talk to the haulers to see if there is a product that's been developed that they can use as an alternative, because then it would make it easier for us to run our plan and not have the conflict that we currently do. And if that product exists and they could use that as an alternative, that would make it a lot easier for all of us.
but it's a nationwide problem when it comes to chemical portable toilets. It just is. There's no easy solution that I'm aware of.
thank you, sir. Okay, moving on, item number 5, development services briefing. We got some upcoming zoning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hope you're doing well. Sarah Arbor, Development Services. From Development Services, what we will be bringing to you, we have 3 requests to change zoning and 1 text amendment. The first item on the agenda is Plan 2301-0001. The applicant is requesting a rezoning from commercial and conservation to RA 20R in conservation. Applicant and owner is Charles Harwell. The property is approximately a 9.15 acre property located on NC 87 South, just to the south of the NC 27 junction. And I don't know if we have a aerial map here from the staff report that might be helpful for you all to view here along with us. All right. And it made you just a little scroll down from there. Perfect. Thank you so much. So as you can see there in the aerial photo, the parcel is undeveloped. It's generally densely wooded. It's an environmentally sensitive parcel here due to the proximity of a nearby creek. There are wetlands present throughout the parcel, and a considerable portion of the parcel is located within the 100-year floodplain. There is public water and public sewer available to the site. Annual daily traffic count is about 22,500 daily trips for this section of NC 87. Site distances are good leaving from the site looking onto 87. There's a zoning vicinity map as well as a district compatibility chart there for your review. As you can see, there is a little bit of commercial there to the north. This parcel here sort of lone and surrounded by RA20R, which is a requested zoning. As you can also see on the map there is a portion of this property that is also zoned conservation. Looking down at the land use vicinity map, you can see that that green area there located on the site is actually environmentally sensitive area. So that's the predominant underlying land use here. There is low density residential as well. on a portion of the property. Looking over at that compatibility chart, you can see where the uses in the RA20R zoning district are pretty compatible with that environmentally sensitive areas and low density residential land use classification. There are some photos of the site there for you to review. No development currently on the site. It appears that maybe the property owners erected a fence. If you look at that photo there, that the top right, you can really kind of get an idea as to just how wet it is on this property. It may be hard to tell with that photo, sort of, scaled down for a staff report size there, but there was standing water at the time of staff's site visit. And as you can see, maybe from those photos on NC 87 and across, there's not a lot of development surrounding this property in the vicinity. So through our evaluation, staff found that the impact to the adjacent property owners and surrounding community is reasonable. The surrounding properties are zoned RA20R, and the zoning classification, which is the zoning classification that's being requested, and the surrounding properties are undeveloped or used for single-family residential purposes. The uses permitted in the requesting zoning district are less intense than the uses that are permitted in the current zoning district. And the development of the subject property under the requested zoning may result in a lesser impact to the surrounding properties than if the property were to be developed in the current zoning designation. Staff found that the requested zoning is compatible with the existing land use classifications. And the subject property has 2 land use classifications: low density residential and environmentally sensitive areas. These land use classifications are compatible with low density development patterns that discourage intrusive development in areas of wetlands and minimize property damage in areas subject to flooding. The permitted uses in the requested zoning are more compatible than the uses permitted in the current zoning district. Staff found that the requested zoning will enhance the public health, safety, and general welfare with potential development that is compatible with the surrounding property uses, zoning district, and underlying land uses. Staff found that the request to rezone the parcel from commercial to RA20R is not a small-scale rezoning and does not require evaluation for reasonableness. The adjacent properties are zoned RA20R, and the uses permitted in the requested zoning district are compatible with the land use classifications. Based on the evaluation, the requested rezoning to RA20R is compatible with the Harnett County Land Use Plan. It would not have an unreasonable impact on the surrounding community because of the compatible existing residential land uses and zoning classification in the area. Staff did recommend that the rezoning request be approved. At the March 6th Planning Board hearing, the Planning Board voted unanimously to approve this due to the residential nature of the area, and there was nobody present at the hearing to speak in opposition. Are there any questions for staff?
Questions?
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item from Development Services is going to be another request for rezoning from RA30 to commercial, case number 2302-0001. The applicant for this zoning request is JPF Properties. It's the PJ's Truck and Body Equipment owners. The property is a 10.91 acre property. The properties, there's 2 properties they're looking to rezone here, are 10.91 acres. It's located on Hodges Chapel Road in Dunn. The parcels are currently vacant, undeveloped land previously used for agricultural purposes. And surrounding land uses consist of single-family residential, several non-residential uses, as well as undeveloped land and agricultural uses. There is public water available here at the site. We'll have to utilize private septic tank currently. The annual daily traffic count is about 1,400 trips for the section of Hodges Chapel Road, and site distances from the site in both directions on Hodges Chapel Road are good. You can see in the zoning vicinity map here, this property is surrounded by, well, you've got two different zoning jurisdictions and several different zoning classifications there. It's a lot of RA 30 and RA 20M, two residential zoning districts, as well as some City of Dunn commercial and industrial zoning to the north, and then some Harnett County commercial there to the south. And the land use classification vicinity map there shows that, this property is located with our employment mixed use land use, which is a land use that's is supposed to support economic development and the creation of jobs. If you take a look at the compatibility chart there between commercial and that employment mixed use, you can see that it's pretty compatible as far as the uses go. There's photos of the site there for you to review. And then at the one of those photos you could see, and I apologize. So this photo here to the right, just wanted to point out, where you see those construction cones. It looks like NCDOT has built that road in there. It doesn't appear to have a name or anything at this time, but there it is there. So the site could potentially be accessed, by Hodges Chapel Road or this new road here. Through staff's evaluation, found the impact to the surrounding community is reasonable, as there are several non-residential uses in the area. Staff found that the requested zoning to commercial is compatible with the land use classification, employment mixed use. The employment mixed use classification encourages economic development, and the uses permitted in the proposed zoning support economic growth. Staff found that the requested zoning would maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare due to the area's existing commercial uses in the area, as well as the potential site improvements that would be required. Staff found that due to the land use compatibility and the proximity of the proposed zoning to the subject property, that the rezoning request does not need to be evaluated for small-scale rezoning. And staff did recommend approval for the zoning request. And at the March 6th Planning Board hearing, the Planning Board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning due to the non-residential uses in the area. There was nobody at the hearing to speak in opposition. Staff's open to any questions.
Question? Question?
Okay.
Your committee, they approved of all of these requests.
And I'm so sorry, Commissioner McCoy. I didn't quite hear you.
Did the committee approve all of these requests to be rezoned?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The Planning Board did recommend approval. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right, our final one here is another requested rezoning from RE20R to commercial. The same applicant and owner as the last case here, the JPF Properties LLC. This one is about an 8.88 acre property located just a little to the north, Robin Hood Road in Dunn. Parcel is currently vacant and unimproved. Single surrounding land uses consist of single-family dwellings, undeveloped land, and agricultural uses, as well as several non-residential uses, including a solar energy facility, educational services, a communication tower, and an outdoor advertising sign. Currently, there are no utilities that are available, at the site. That may change, depending on what type of development takes place there. The annual daily traffic counts for these sections of Robin Hood Road and Fairview Road are not available, and site distances from the site on both of those roads are described as good. There's a zoning vicinity map there for your review. You can see there's property north, this property and the property north of it going up to the Johnson County line or RA20R. However, there's a lot of industrial zoning out there, as well as sort of in the southern part of that map, you can see where there's some commercial located to the south. This property, again, is located in the employment mixed use. Has an employment mixed use land use classification. Again, designed to support that economic development along major thoroughfares. In the chart there shows that compatibility between the commercial zoning and the employment mixed use. There's several photos of the site for your review here, since this property fronted on two roads to kind of give you an idea of what's going on there, as well as the changes going on. Currently, Robin Hood Road is under construction. I think it's a part of NCDOT's improvements to the I-95. And through the evaluation, staff found that the impact to the surrounding community is reasonable due to the existing non-residential uses in the area. Staff found that the requested zoning to commercial is compatible with employment mixed use land use classification, and the employment mixed use land use is a development node that encourages opportunities for economic growth along major thoroughfares. And the uses permitted in the commercial zoning district support the intent of the underlying land use. Excuse me. Staff found that the requested zoning would maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare due to the area's existing non-residential uses, as well as the potential site improvements that would be required. Staff found that due to the compatibility of the underlying land use with the requested zoning, the proximity of the requested zoning district to the subject property, the request to rezone this property from RA20R to commercial does not need to be evaluated for small-scale rezoning. Staff recommended approval for this rezoning request. And at the March 6th Planning Board hearing, they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the rezoning due to the I-95 location and the amount of existing non-residential zone parcels in the area. And there's nobody at the hearing to speak in opposition. And staff's open to any questions.
Questions for staff? Well, thank you very
All
much.
right,
We will
thank
have
you.
a zoning hearing
Yep.
next week on this. You have a UDO change for us?
Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jay Sykes, Development Services. Discussing an internal text amendment from Article 12. This is looking at, basically, as one planning board member said, basically, we're just setting a timeline for land use amendments. If y'all recall, we've had several land use amendments last year, and currently in the ordinance, we review those as if they're rezonings. A lot of our residential regulations are geared around our land use classifications. However, as we know, we're about to go through a new land use plan update. That's going to take a good 10 to 12 months. So it's a much more in-depth process. Staff didn't want to have to rush through a land use amendment as if we were looking at a rezoning, because you use the land use to evaluate rezonings, right? And that's our tool. That's the board's legal tool. So staff didn't want to have to rush through it. We didn't want the planning board to have to rush through it, or the commissioners to have to rush through it. So we went back. We discussed with y'all several times last month, probably also in the same time frame that we were talking about updating the plan. So we wanted to just go through and kind of get this on the books to codify an actual timeline in the existing ordinance for updating land use for amendments.
because they will happen from time to time, especially even if you go through a rezoning, they may not be 100% compatible with the land use plan. It can be amended on the spot, and that's with the rezoning. So assuming we look at one separately, and we looked at neighboring jurisdictions to see if A, was there more specific information in their ordinances, and B, what was their time frame. So we went through and basically saying these amendments should be considered twice a year, with at least 2 month staff review, and then and we will set those specific dates as we do after the commissioner said y'all's meeting dates. We go through and set our meeting dates. So we'll notify those on our calendar. That way, the public will know if they wish to kind of tag in a land use amendment in relation to any sort of development project. Of course, with this new land use update will come a bit of a revised land use map. So theoretically, we won't, we might see maybe one this year, just as things change. But ideally, if we work with the development world throughout this process within the next 10, 12 months, in the future we probably won't have as many onesie twosies, if that makes sense. Staff did recommend approval. Again, the planning board seemed to like this idea and they appreciated the thoughts. They recommended approval, and no one spoke in opposition. Thoughts, questions? And just an update, we have finalized interviews with 3 different consultants on the land use plan. Staff and the interview team is getting back together this afternoon, trying to go through that. So hopefully we'll have one of those selected soon, and we'll be get that ball rolling.
Questions? Comments? Is this something that we have to have a hearing on?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
It is?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
then.
Yeah, we're advertising for public hearing for this. So we'll be back in next Monday night, I guess it is.
All right, well, next Monday, we'll go ahead and have a hearing on this proposed text amendment.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Y'all have a good day.
you as well. All right, moving on, economic development update, Mr. Lockamy.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Going to give a quick update on economic development today, and we'll talk about some progress we made over the last year and where we're going. Okay, so last year I started in early January, and so that was one of your first steps from the Rosen Associates strategic plan, hiring a director, getting a staff, and trying to really compete with the other counties and do what we could to kind of step it up. One of the biggest things that we did last year was form the Harnett County Economic Development Partnership. That's a new 501c3 nonprofit organization. What we did is we basically found a way to merge the Properties Corporation along with the Economic Development Council, retain some of the initial business leaders that were on that board. We rolled in two county commissioners that are going to be appointed annually, and now we've got a lot of the business leaders on the board that represent a lot of our manufacturing businesses, CFOs and CEOs. The board is not complete yet. We've got 2 more business member positions to fill. One will be filled from a fundraising campaign, and the other one could potentially be filled from a board member in the Southwest area. We're also trying to, in addition to geographic diversity, achieve racial diversity on our board as well. And so that is a priority of the board in doing that. And so you will, I would just say this is a marathon for us. And so this is the initial. We completed an feasibility analysis for Edgerton Industrial Park. The City of Dunn had been under a moratorium for the last year or so. They're under a special order of consent. We worked with Sanford Holdhauser. We understand the specs of Edgerton now, the full development capacity that can help if we are navigating different processes to be able to show the build out. And so we're going to be presenting that to the Economic Development Board here soon. We hired a new marketing director, and so I've got my staff with me today. Elizabeth Edwards, if you will, just raise your hand. That's Elizabeth. Elizabeth came from William Peace University. And so we're glad to have her on board. And you guys know Angie Stewart. Angie's sitting right there. Angie has also sort of adapted into a new role for us, a business retention and expansion role. And so our job really, or our goal, is to have a really robust presence in BRE and marketing. And so they're going to help us do that. We exposed a lot of different developers and investors to Harnett County last year. These were everything from companies to speculative builders, land developers. We launched a new website for economic development. You see the draft right there. Your success is our business. That is a tagline that came from a visioning session with the Rosen Associates Strategic Plan Committee. And we were proud to announce ILC Dover, a life sciences and aerospace company, recently announced in Lillington. And so I think that's big news for us. That's the second company that's out of the life science genre that's based here in Harnett. It finds a way to incorporate aerospace as well, and so I think that's pretty strong. And we're currently working with two codenamed projects right now. One of them, I think, is more or less kicking the tires regionally, looking at a lot of sites, while the other one, I believe, is very serious. Life sciences, healthcare, and would be 363 new jobs. And so I think we're moving very closer to an announcement on that. Okay, let's talk about the priorities that are underway or actually will be launching this year. Okay, so product development. This is our ability to capture sites and build buildings to capture companies that are locating and expanding within our community. And so, again, the city of Dunn has been under a moratorium. They're under a special order of consent. And so what we're going to do is we are basically updating a state certification, industrial certification, to the Edgerton Industrial Park site. And we are navigating that update right about the time the city of Dunn, gets close to being completely out of that special order of consent. The reason is there will be new phase one environmentals that will be good for 3 years. And so we want them to be good for the tenure of time that the park is actually open to prospects. And so we're getting close to that. Last year, we worked with a regional, or actually a statewide developer who has a good reputation for building industrial spec buildings. And we came real close to having a deal. The uncertainty in the economy with interest rates kept that deal from happening. And so what we've decided to do this year, got direction from the partnership board the other day at a retreat, was to issue a request for qualifications and proposals this year to attract our next builder and developer to help us with the spec building. The goal with that is to attract a company that will be a partner, a private partner in a building with us, and to attract multiple companies that we have the ability to work through a process and select one. If one falls through, we have others there waiting with us, is the plan. And so that process will involve both of our boards. It'll involve the county commissioners and the partnership board. And so you'll be seeing more about that this year. And also the next one as well. We have an effort underway right now to identify sites countywide, and so the consultants are helping us narrow that down, and we'll be making recommendations about the sites that make sense from an industrial end user standpoint to pursue, and they'll be helping us rank those sites and look at what we're working with. Okay, and we have the Western Harnett Industrial Park. As part of that effort, we are trying to figure out, I think we're going to have to take a hard look at that site and figure out what we can do to preserve it. There's only one way in, one way out of the industrial park. The access is limited. It doesn't have natural gas. And so there's some barriers, there's some limitations, and I think looking closer at that might be able to help us look at maybe some strategic acquisitions that can preserve it and see it through. Sometimes these things take a while to see through, and I think our job is to do what we can to keep it on track and fight for it to be a home for future jobs and investment. And so we're going to be doing that. Workforce development. Um, we are working as a staff. We've have done a quick inventory of our educational credentials and pathways to serve the community, and then we're going to be meeting with stakeholders at the different educational institutions regionally, the training centers, and support organizations, and just to make sure that we know what we're working with. We've already been doing that the whole time, but this is this is something to involve the entire board in as well. And so we're working on that. We have 5 target sectors as well. So in economic development and county economic development, you basically get leads from the state of North Carolina, the Economic Development Partnership. Those leads align with the resources in the state, with the educational climate, the military bases, the types of companies that are locating and expanding. And so those target sectors are the highest and best. They're the best of the best. They're the types of companies that pay high wages, that folks are going through the community college and through schools like Campbell to be able to fill those workforces. And so if we can land those types of companies, it really helps raise our wage. And so those are some companies that we have scripted messages for. And so we have 5 target sectors. And what we did was that came out of the retreat. We ended up altering, taking logistics and distribution out and replacing it with ag tech, which is a new target sector. And so you see we've got food and beverage, life sciences, military, defense, and advanced manufacturing. And several of those really do significantly align with the leads that we get and the companies that are locating and expanding in the region. Okay. We're going to, through Angie's new role with Business Retention and Expansion Director, we're going to have a real proactive effort to have scheduled visits with industries, communicate on a regular basis to our companies. We're going to be basically planning for an industry appreciation event that should be held in the spring of next year, and so a lot of the partnerships will have events like that to profile the success of the community and the municipalities within the community, success of the companies, success of the workforce, things of that nature. And so it helps kind of build traction for what we're doing. And we're going to, I guess, take a lot of the resources that we use to help support the existing industries and have a place for that on the economic development website as well, to make sure that we're not only trying to recruit new businesses, but we're profiling existing industries and make sure we're providing the support needed for them to access those resources. Part of a public-private partnership is always funding. The county will, this is the county's organization, the partnership, and so the county will be a sustainable funder in it, but we're also going to be seeking donations from private companies as well. And so we brought in a group called Convergent Nonprofit Solutions. They've helped propped up a lot of the public-private partnerships in North Carolina for economic development. They've got a high success rate, and so we're going to be kicking that off with them with the board in April. And we have 2 loans between the county and the partnership that will need to be settled. And so we'll be working with Chris Appel and Brent, and I'll be talking with you all about that in the future at some point. But I think one of them's going to work itself out, and the other we'll just need to figure out. So nothing to worry about there. And then I think evaluate staffing annually, just as a partnership. We're county staff, but the partnership board, as far as the retreat, will just look at the operations, look at what we're doing, and make sure that we're fulfilling their need as well, as a group and as a team, and they'll be providing input. Okay. And then we have some marketing efforts, and so these are going to be external and internal. And so quickly, just external, think about meeting with our state agencies and making sure that we're scheduling those visits. We actually have a visit with the Partnership of North Carolina as a staff tomorrow. We're going to be going from our partnership board meeting and heading to Garner and meeting with EDPNC staff and promoting Harnett County. And so you see the other items, but basically it's just to kind of use the tools that are available to tell our story, get our message out there, promote the folks that are in our community and the workforce, promote the employers, and make sure we're competing at a high level. Internal marketing. These are really to get the message out about what we're doing, what the priorities are, and how this works. Everything from the county newsletter to communicating with local groups, presenting to rotaries and chambers, things of that nature. And I'm here now giving you a report. I guess this is the first quarter of 2023, so you'll see me every quarter now doing that. And what I'll do is I may mix it up a little bit. I'll give you an update, but I may choose the time when I come before you to give you a presentation and tell you about something neat that's going on in the region, maybe a training center, maybe something that might be of interest to you. All right. And then quality of life. One of the things that we heard a lot in the retreat, and Dr. Creed at Campbell was high on this. A lot of the folks that they're hiring over there, they're constantly hearing quality of life, and so we're going to research those items that are appropriate to companies and major employers, even institutional employers, and we're going to just see where we're at and see and take that progress and report on it to various boards and commissions like Parks and Rec, chambers, others that are involved in that and have their own leadership board set up, just to be relaying information. And that's really it. We've got a lot going on. The forming of the partnership last year was key for us, I think. And so again, it's a marathon for us, and so happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Number one is, can you explain a little bit more about the aerospace plant that you mentioned?
Yeah. So this company, ILC Dover, they are manufacturing products, and they're doing especially raw material ingredients packaging over at their facility. But they have been involved in manufacturing components for spacesuits. And so you've not only got NASA out there, but you've got private companies that are involved in space travel now. And so that is I think Richard Branson's one of them. Y'all might have seen his spaceship, and you've seen Jeff Bezos travel into space in recent years. And so that's creating demand for their products. And so they're going to be doing a little bit of both at that facility in Lillington, is my understanding, when they're at full capacity. They'll be doing a little bit of medical device manufacturing and also supporting their aerospace side as well.
I'm glad to see that there's, you still continue to utilize that plant because it's been there for a long time. My other question, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying here, is because this is something that's been on for a long time. Got an economic development board. You have no minorities on that board. How do you expect to recruit businesses in this county but not having any minority input in serving on that board? And this is something I've been talking about for many years, and I see nothing has changed at all. There are businesses in this county, minority business. There are qualified minorities in this county to serve on the Economic Development Board. And I think it would serve us in this county much better, that board, if you had at least one minority on that board. And let me say this, I represent everybody in this county. I don't care what ethnicity you are or who you are. Some things in this county has got to change. And I'm always pushed aside because I keep saying this. And I got 3 more years here and I'm gonna keep saying it. I wanna see this county become a productive county, providing jobs and economic development for our citizens. And that means all of our citizens. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Witherspoon? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Great. Item number 7, discuss nonprofit funding. Ms. Allie Fouts. Morning.
Good morning. Only one for before you today, and that is the Central Carolina Community College. Thanks to Dr. Matthews, who we heard from earlier today. So after your approval of this contract with CCCC, 44 out of 46 of our recipients will have received their funding. So we're almost there, which is crazy. So let's see, the last two might take a few more months. There's just a few more details that need to be ironed out with those contracts and those organizations. So we are working to get those to you, but I will bring them before you whenever I receive them.
Questions, comments? Pleasure of the board to add this for our consent agenda next week. Good for the consent agenda. Go ahead and add this.
Thank you.
Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. Bell.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm here before you today regarding DPS's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. And what this is actually a FEMA-related project that's carried out through DPS, in which the government entities, nonprofit organizations, tribal nations can apply for this grant program to mitigate various items, and one of them is acquisition of property and or relocation of homes, businesses, and public facilities. So what's happened is 3 properties in the county have been selected for this hazard mitigation grant program as a result of Hurricane Florence. That these 3 properties are in low-lying areas on Anderson Creek that were sustained some kind of damage during Hurricane Florence, and so they were identified as properties to participate in this grant program. So as part of the program, the initial process begins with a discussion with the emergency manager. So EMS has been working with DPS on selecting these 3 home sites. And so I'll tell you the 3 homes are 109 Coates Road in Linden, 145 Coates Road in Linden. They're right next to each other. And then 78 Burnett Lane in Linden. Close proximity to those 2 homes. Again, all these are located on Anderson Creek. So as part of these programs, what happens is DPS handles all the transactions. So they handle the closing, title work, resolve any liens. Then the end is they will then deed the property directly from the homeowner to the county. So the county will become the owner of these 3 properties. Again, DPS to pay for all the costs of relocation. Now they are in charge of the cost of demolition, removal of the houses. Now EMS has worked out an agreement with the 109 and 145 Coates Road addresses that they want to do practice burns on these homes. Once that will be done after the county actually obviously gets deeded these properties. Once those controlled burns will be done, the homes will be removed at the cost of DPS. The other property has a mobile home on it, so they can't do the practice burn. So that mobile home would just be removed. And then obviously these individuals will be relocated to another site, not at the cost of the county. That's just part of the grant program. Now, when the county does become owners of these 3 properties, part of the agreement is that they will that you cannot build any permanent structures on them, so no homes, businesses, or anything else like that could ever be built on there. So generally, what you're doing is either maintaining it as an empty lot or let it go back to its natural growth. I know we evaluated for potential parks, but they're not good locations for parks. So I think the idea is probably just to minimal maintenance or just let natural growth occur on this. So the timeline on this is 145 Coates Road is ready to be deeded to the county if the board approves accepting this deed and moving forward. The other 2 properties are in the process. They're not ready yet, but if the board's approval to move forward this process, I would just keep the board up to date on when those 2 properties will be ready to be deeded to the property or to the county. But if there's any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
You have any questions? Comments?
Just one, and I may have this information and have missed it, but what size lots are we talking about here? About how much land? Are we
So they're not very big lots. So the two on Coates Road are actually in a small. It's just one street neighborhood, in a street. I'm gonna. This is a guess because I don't have it in front of me, but half acre ish
Okay.
size lots.
Okay.
So they're not too big. Now, of course, the Coates Road, they're right next to each other, so they'll be to an acre maybe right there.
Thank you.
Didn't see a memorandum or anything. Are we just gonna?
So there was a previous memorandum that was already agreed upon a while back on this grant program. So all we would do on here is just if the board approve acceptance of deeds as they are presented to the county.
Are there any questions or comments? Is it the pleasure of the board to add this to the consent agenda for next week as well? Go ahead and add that to the agenda as well next week.
Okay, thank you.
Sir. We're at 9 still, so discuss lobbying firm for the RFQ. Mr. Trout?
Thank you, Chair. The board considered at a previous agenda the possibility of hiring a lobbying firm. At that meeting, no action was taken. I had discussions with various board members privately and decided that we would look at doing the RFQ again. So I sent the information out on a broader network in order to be able to see if we could reach additional firms that might be able to provide this service. We had 7 firms instead of 3 apply at this point. I evaluated those 7 firms and made the decision to interview 4 different firms for these services. After conducting that and checking some references with our elected officials, I was able to determine that I think Kairos is our best selection for being able to provide these services. It was very close. One of the other firms was really within a couple of points of being considered, and I thought that it ended up being a better process. We had better applicants, and I think that if we were to determine in the future that doing this, we would intend that this initial contract would be for 2 years, basically cover a long session and a short session, and then we would get, come to the board and see if this is something that we want to consider again in the future, put out an RFP, and again, go through the selection process to evaluate. We may determine to continue at that point with the same firm, but one step at a time. Let's try this. Let's see if it's something that the board feels is of value, and make the decision to whether to continue at that point.
Questions or comments?
I appreciate you looking at other firms, lobbying firms. I think that's the most practical way to go, instead of just giving us information on one firm. And we can evaluate each one along with you to see which is the best. I really personally don't see why we need to be paying for a lobby firm, because I personally feel we have a good relationship with our legislative representatives. We have a meeting with them at least twice a year, and we as commissioners, I haven't been with these commissioners, but in the past, I normally go to Raleigh to lobby personally with them. But if that's the way the board want to go, I'm fine with that. After we all look at the firms and then make a good decision of in which direction that we're going to go. Right now, and things could change. We're getting a lot of funds from the federal funds that's coming in, bringing money into this county for us to use for areas of things that we need here in this county. And I gotta say, it's been the first time I've seen this happen in a long, long time. We get funds from the state to do some things that are much needed in this county, things that have been pushed aside for many, many, many years. So that's where I'm going. I mean, I appreciate you. I appreciate the direction in which you're going on this. Uh, It's up to the commissioners on which way we go. I personally feel that money can be used in different directions of a lot of things that we need to do here in this county. But if it's what the board want to do, I'm fine with it, but I just don't see it. I'm not saying I'm voting for it. I got to get the information, look at the information and evaluate the information, see which direction. And I'm sorry to take up the time, but that's just me. I'm just telling you what I feel.
We're here for discussion. Any other questions, comments? What is the pleasure of the board? Would you like to have this as a separate line item next week for more discussion?
I'm fine, whatever the board would like to do.
I would be up for having this as a separate line item next week for discussion. Add that to the agenda, please. Right, we will now discuss the Town of Anger, letter of support. And, this is going to be an action item as well.
Right. So I was contacted regarding a need for the town of Anger to have letters of support included in their application to Congressman Nickel in order to receive federal grant funds from various programs that they can receive directed funding from the federal level. So felt that this was something that we needed to accomplish. There was a short timeline provided of March 17th. So therefore, we need to take action today in order to be able to include these in their packet as they submit. I'll be evaluating the same programs to determine if there are any projects that we will also provide as potential applications. So.
Any questions or comments? In your packets, you should have the letter of support in front of you.
And there are three areas that they're looking to apply for. The first one is water and sewer infrastructure. The second one is for their town hall. And the third one is for their community center that they're pursuing.
Do I hear a motion?
Make a motion, we supply the letters of support for these requests.
Second.
A motion and a second in order to supply these letters of support for the Town of Anger. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead and passes unanimously. We'll go ahead and get this signed afterwards. Okay, moving on to new item on number 11, DMV discussion. Commissioner Weatherspoon, would you like to kick that off?
Yeah, I was contacted last week by a citizen that would like to establish a DMV office for tags, titles, that type of thing, in Harnett, in the Lillington area. After talking with him, I think he wants to consider looking out 27 towards the western part of the county, still in the Lillington vicinity. He has gotten support from Senator Bergen on this. He's got support from Mayor McFadden, who I saw earlier but has left. And I think he's gotten support from, not sure. He was working on support from the Lillington Chamber. One of the considerations is he wants to be far enough away so that he doesn't impose on Town of Anger with their DMV. So I told him I would, Senator Bergen suggested to him that he get board support. I told him I would bring it to the board for discussion and possible support for this effort.
Anybody have any questions, comments? I'd like to personally say I think that's outstanding. The closest ag office that we have is really in Spring Lake, at least down my way, and I would come up to this side of the river at least for that, if not have to go to Anger. I typically do, so that's outstanding. Board would like to do.
Well, I think it's okay. I mean, they're citizens and they have to drive way over here when they can have something close to them. I'm not against that. I mean, if we can do it and if they will do it, I'm for it.
Yeah, for those of us who have been around a while, there was an office in Lillington for a long time, and so I think it would definitely benefit our citizens going south and west if we have one in that vicinity. So I would certainly support that effort.
Sounds like the consensus of the board is that we'd be in support of it if you want to back out and allow further discussions. Standing. Anything else? Good. Discussion on that? All right.
When can we get the letter?
The letter is, she has the letter here available.
Okay.
So if you could stop by and see Melissa before you leave and go ahead and sign the letter, that'd be great.
Standing. That brings us to the county manager's report. Mr. Trout.
I don't have much other than the next meeting is in the evening. I will be at a conference during the day, but I will be back for the meeting that evening.
Do we have a need for closed session today? No. Standing. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adjourn. We are adjourned.